So today, our topic is living well with mental illness. If you are struggling with a mental health challenge, I think my presentation would give you hope that your condition will improve one day. How you are feeling right now is completely temporary. It's not a life sentence, and we can still live a full life with a mental illness. I will talk a little bit about my early signs of mental illness, the years and events that led to my suicide attempt. But I will focus more on how I successfully managed my mental illness and how I experienced my clinical recovery. Okay, and at the end, there's a question and answer session where you can ask me basically any questions you have. When I was a baby, I was one of those babies that cried all the time. I was born a very neurotic, sensitive, and anxious person. This was my default expression. In 80% of my baby photos, I had an anxious expression on my face. And as an infant, taking care of me was always very tiresome, especially during sleep time. It would take forever to put me to sleep. And I was described as very shy and introverted when I was a toddler. I would be terrified if I had to speak in class. My voice would sound like a mosquito. I had a lot of phobias. I was afraid of all kinds of bugs, insects, spiders, rodents, and even small ants. So whenever those panic attack came up, I found it really hard to breathe, and my heart would beat really, really fast. I always had a lot of mental energy. I was thinking all the time, and thoughts could be very random and meaningless. My sleep always had a bad quality. It was really hard to fall asleep. Starting from grade 5, this was when I would stay awake for the entire night for no major reason. If I was excited about something or sad about something, I could easily lose sleep over it, just thinking about it over and over. Starting from grade 9, I experienced social anxiety. Not that I was scared of making friends. I had friends and I enjoyed spending time with my friends. But what bothered me was whenever I was in a crowd, whenever walking into a class, I felt very anxious, nervous, and extremely self-conscious. If I had to do a presentation in class, it would almost trigger a panic attack and I would not be able to sleep the night before. I was very pessimistic. I'm thinking of everything in their worst case scenario. Just couldn't help being a negative Nancy. And I was also very sensitive and neurotic. If someone gave me a dirty look or unkind comment, I would be extremely upset and hurt for days. I didn't have a lot of curiosities, therefore I lacked the interest to read about things that are not school related. People would describe me as shallow because I just didn't read, or I just didn't care about a lot of stuff going on in the world. I spent a lot of time trying to look pretty, just, makeup and stuff. So I didn't have a lot of patience. If I wanted to do something, if I wanted something, I had to be right here, right now. I also had trouble regulating my emotions. If I started crying over something, I couldn't stop crying, even if I wanted to. So when I was 16, a girl in my class said something to me that was a little mean. I cried that night until I started to experience a suicidal feeling. It wasn't that I wished to die, but the feeling of wanting to die just came up beyond my control. So, okay, why am I sharing all this? Because after my mental illness has been successfully treated, I am a completely different person. All of the troublesome physiological feelings and symptoms are gone. especially my sleep. The quality of my sleep now is excellent. My personality even changed. I'm now a very outgoing and social person. It's natural for me to think of things in a positive light. The experience of being human, the inner experience of being a human has completely changed. If you can also identify with some of those symptoms and signs of mental illness, be encouraged that who you are right now doesn't have to stay the same. Once our brain is healthy, we will feel more relaxed and comfortable internally, and we will see the outside world as much more colorful and interesting. So one of the turning points for my mental health was when I found the right medication and the right dosage. I stayed on them for 17 years. So 17 years. So I have not experienced another relapse ever since 2007. I don't have any noticeable side effects right now because the dosage is minimum and my body has adjusted to it and depended on it, which is not a bad thing. So this leads to the next subject that I want to talk about, which is who needs to be medicated for life. There are two types of depression. There's clinical depression and there's situational depression. Situational depression is when someone experiences a traumatic event in their life. For example, the loss of a loved one or bankruptcy. Earlier this year, my friend's dad passed away during the pandemic and she couldn't travel home to attend his funeral. And she was really worried about her mom's well-being. So she couldn't sleep, she didn't have any appetite, and she lost interest in doing everything. But after 3 months, after her mom moved in with her brother, she gradually recovered from her depression. She became herself again, a happy and optimistic person. So in this case, her depression is only a temporary mental state. Some people might need antidepressants to help them with sleep or other unbearable symptoms, but most people can recover by themselves and they won't need medication for life. But on the other hand, if your depression doesn't have a big trigger, your reason for being depressed is not understandable by other people. For example, the reason for my depression was because of a breakup. The relationship only lasted for 4 weeks. So people were like, are you serious? Like they couldn't understand why I wanted to commit suicide over something so small. Neither did I, because unfortunately, at the time, I had zero knowledge of how to treat a mental illness. After being tortured by my severe insomnia and 2 months without treatment, I made the ultimate attempt to end my life by jumping off the balcony from the 8th floor. I didn't die, but was paralyzed for life. So in my case, my manic depression or bipolar disorder is a clinical medical condition. It's not a temporary mental state. Rather, I was born with this condition with all the early symptoms that I experienced since infancy. So if your condition is similar to mine, ask yourself, do you have a big reason to be depressed? Did you grow up with many physiological symptoms that trouble you? And for most people, if the first onset of your depression happened at a very young age, let's say 16, 18, or 16 to 24, and the trigger of your depression is not a big deal, then likely you have a clinical medical condition. Medication is the only effective way to treat your physiological symptoms. And most of you might need medication for life to maintain your mental health. Many people learn that after their illness came back the second time because they stopped taking medication. Others might be able to survive without medication, but their quality of life, relationships, friendships, studies, and work might be affected because their mental health is not stable. So next, besides the lack of knowledge on mental illness, I want to talk about what could have been done or undone to prevent me from making my suicide attempt. So at the time, I was in grade 12, 3 months left before graduation. I had 5 final exams to do, and I had to do well in order to make it into university. But at that time, I was really sick. I couldn't sleep at all, and I could not read or study. I was an embarrassment. People knew I wanted to commit suicide because my boyfriend dumped me. So I rather die than going to school. But my parents insist that I go to school because I quote, they said, "My future, your future depends on it." My future didn't depend on whether or not I completed high school on time. My future didn't even get ruined by my suicide attempt. This is what I observe among our members. They are sick, but they continue want to go to school. Sometimes it's the person themselves. They are high achievers. They want to complete their study. My little advice is that if your schoolwork becomes too much for you, or the social environment is a stressor and you feel nervous being around people, you have to take a medical leave. Even if you want to continue going, your poor mental health might affect your mark, right? It will affect your academic record more than taking the rest of your semester off and retaking those courses next year. So you have a medical condition, your brain is sick, like an illness in other major organs in your body. You have a legit reason to take a break and concentrate on recovery. However, during your break, you should still try to study on your own to the best of your ability, because reading or doing math can help you brain recover on a functional level. And if it's too hard for you to understand academic stuff, you can try to pick up a hobby like painting, cooking, or crafting. Just do something to occupy your idle time. The second mistake my people made was they were constantly trying to talk me out of my depression. Everyone was focusing on the breakup. My parents tried to make me happy by going on a trip to Washington, D.C. The whole time I was thinking about crashing our car into another vehicle. I was formulating different ways of committing suicide. And I certainly did not see the trip as a road to healing. My experience was so terrible because I already had social phobia to start with. So when I lost all my sanity, the phobic level just reached another degree. So therefore, the trip actually worsened my condition. So if somebody was depressed to the point of suicide, there's no use trying to talk them out of their depression or make them happy by any means, except by helping them seek medical treatment, because it's their brain that's sick. So number 3, when I was going through extreme insomnia, I was prescribed sleeping pills by my family doctor, who didn't have a lot of training on mental illness. I took 5 sleeping pills before bedtime, and that couldn't even put me to a nap. So to treat my insomnia, I needed psychotropic medications that target the root cause. The root cause was bipolar disorder. So when someone has insomnia because they have a mental illness, insomnia is not a sleep disorder. Rather, it's one of the symptoms of their mental illness. For example, if you have the flu, sore throat is one of the symptoms. Taking Halls or other like mentals might help soothe the soreness in your throat, but to recover from it, you have to recover from the flu first, right? So therefore, if you have chronic insomnia, you find it hard to fall asleep, your thoughts are all over the place, and sleeping pills have become ineffective, it could be that you have a mental health condition. Treating the condition first is the key to having a better quality of sleep. Mistake number 4, not knowing the limitations of family doctors and the differences between a psychiatrist and a psychologist. For people who have situational depression, like my friend who became depressed because her dad passed away, seeing a family doctor might be enough because their condition is not complicated and relatively speaking, they can recover easily. However, for serious mental illnesses like bipolar disorder, major depression, or schizophrenia, family doctors can manage it. If you know your depression is a mental illness, not because of situational factors, then you need to seek treatment from a psychiatrist. In Canada, the fastest way to see a psychiatrist is to go to an emergency room in the hospital, and they will give you a referral to a psychiatrist working in the community. Or if they see that you are in danger to yourself or others, they will admit you to their inpatient unit for immediate treatment. A psychiatrist is a doctor that went to a medical school, someone who treats your brain as a medical condition, whereas a psychologist is usually someone who tries to counsel you or listen to your problems. But in your case, if you have a medical condition, you don't benefit much from talk therapy. It's like when you have diabetes, no one can talk you out of your diabetes, right? So medical treatment is the key to controlling your physiological symptoms. And if you do have things that are bothering you in your life, talk therapy might give you some directions, but only after your brain is treated and you have control over how you want to think and how to act. So even though my illness was terrible, I have never seen a psychologist before. I found that after my mental illness is treated and my brain is healthy, things no longer bother me anymore. So being happy and moving on is effortless. Another mistake my parents made was when I was suicidal, they didn't want to send me to a psychiatric facility because they felt that I would be affected by other patients who are insane or violent. This is a big misconception and big stigma. Going and staying in a psych ward is the first step in suicide prevention. It's the only place to keep people safe, not just from self-harm, but people who are suicidal can have thoughts of hurting someone else. And because of their insomnia, they might not be able to sleep at all. So for family members to watch over them 24/7, it will be extremely exhausting. So going to a psych ward, a psychiatric facility, not only gives family members a break, but the patient will receive the necessary diagnosis and treatment. So over the years, I stay in a psych ward in and out for about 6 months in total. Although the condition was not perfect compared to other medical wings, it was a place where I could concentrate on getting better. My doctor could monitor me to find out just exactly what type of mental illness I have. Unlike other medical conditions, diagnosis for mental illness cannot be made through imaging or blood test or other objective ways to diagnose a condition. So for instance, up to 65% of people who have bipolar disorder were initially misdiagnosed with depression, which means many people who think that they have depression, actually they have bipolar disorder. And I was one of them. So when my doctor first saw me after my jump, he only knew I was depressed, but he didn't know that I was manic before my depression. Therefore, after being on antidepressants for 3 years, which was the wrong medication for me, I had another relapse of bipolar disorder. And it was then like 3 years after my injury that I received the correct diagnosis for my condition. Therefore, during your mental health breakdown, if you admit yourself into a hospital, If you are under the observation of doctors and nurses as an inpatient, the chance of receiving the correct diagnosis is more assured. So one major difference between bipolar disorder and clinical depression is sleep. People with bipolar disorder usually have extreme insomnia. They can't sleep at all, whereas people who are depressed can sleep. Some might even sleep too much, but they don't feel refreshed after waking up. So we will have a psychiatrist giving us a seminar next month, and we will talk about this more next time, okay? So before my ultimate suicide attempt, my first attempt was overdosing on sleeping pills. I got sent to a psychiatric ward for 3 days, during which I was prescribed antidepressants. But the medication did not start working right away. Everyone in my life began to tell me that medication would not help. They would just mess me up even more. I don't need medication. I just need to be strong. So that's when I stopped taking my medication, which was the biggest mistake, because it would take at least 2 or 3 weeks for any type of psychotropic medication to kick in. And you wouldn't feel the positive effect only until the 8th week. So before medication starts to elevate your mood, you might even experience side effects first. So when that happens, you have to be patient. You have to have faith that it will work. The side effects should not discourage you from continuing your treatment. The positive benefit of medication far outweighs the side effects. I will talk about that more later. So to sum up, everything went wrong at the same time, but the lack of knowledge, not knowing that the nature of my condition is a medical condition, not a psychological condition, not a weakness in my character. That was the core reason for all the mistakes. And those mistakes were made by my parents because I was too sick to help myself. But I don't blame them anymore, because at the time, information, education, support groups, and the internet itself was nothing like we have today. But even with enough information and support, we still see more and more people today who are depressed and beyond help. So what are the keys to healing? Let's talk about the next. How I recovered. What I did right to finally reach the end of my ordeal. So the first thing we did right was getting this dog. He was a gift from God. He's so smart and he understands human affairs. At the time, I had no one to hang out with. I was so ashamed of myself that I didn't feel like I was worthy of anyone. And when I was really lonely, my dog was my best companion. When I was with my parents, I didn't enjoy their presence. But when I was with my dog, it was pure joy. I know a friend who had depression because of his disability, and he got a service dog, and he had to take the dog out for a walk every day. And that's how he made friends with other dog owners in the dog park. And that's how he came out of his shell and became happy again. So as a parent, as a patient, if you like dog and you are able to take care of it, better yet, if you are able to walk it every day, being able to get out of the house, that alone will help facilitate your recovery. And on the other hand, as a parent, I did see some parents get a pet for their child, but it didn't really help because their children doesn't like animals in the first place. And the parents ended up have to take care of the dog as their extra burden. So therefore, as a parent, really evaluate your situation. Do you have the space and the time for a pet? Will that really benefit your child? Did it really ask for a pet? And second thing I did right was returning to university after a year of rest. I started I started my school by taking only 2 courses per semester. It was double trouble for me. Not only I had a mental illness, but I also had a physical disability to cope with. So I could not take a full-time course load. And my parents didn't have high expectations for me. So they just wanted me to pass. So I didn't have a lot of pressure in school. Going back to school gave me a purpose, even though I did not enjoy school life. My dad told me that the reason for going to school was to learn knowledge and to get my degree. I shouldn't worry about what people thought about me or not having a fun life as a young person. So I found that every time I was reading a textbook, I was unable to think about how terrible my life is. Having something to work on definitely helped with recovery. I had a very small course load, and I actually spent 7 years completing a 4-year degree, which is totally okay. It didn't affect my career in any way. So my advice is that take it slow. Don't think about achieving too much academically, because you don't need to have an impressive degree in order to enjoy a good career. I really love what I do right now, even though I only have a bachelor's degree. So as somebody who has a mental illness, we are naturally more sensitive or have a low emotional intelligence when it comes to handling conflict with other people. So our ability to handle stress can be very poor. Therefore, when it comes to career choice, my little wisdom is that try not to enter a work environment where there's a lot of competition, a lot of drama, or the workload is too much, or the deadline is unforgivable. For instance, I'm now working at a nonprofit organization that's located inside a rehab hospital. Everyone is so nice to people with disabilities, and all of my co-workers are really friendly, and there's no competition between colleagues because our job is not based on performance. So best yet, I don't have to worry or think about my work after my workday is over. We never had to work overtime or bring our work home. So this is a very ideal job for someone who has a mental illness. The fact is, even though you may achieve really high academically, you have a really impressive degree, and the job earns you a lot of money and social status, it also comes with an equivalent amount of stress, responsibilities, and duties. And as a person with a mental illness, you might not be able to handle prolonged stress like that. So think about that as you are choosing your courses at university. One thing my mom did that was so terrible was she made me choose business management at university. I hated so much that I ended up dropping it and choosing psychology instead. As a parent, not just a parent of a person with a mental illness, but any parent, try not to intervene in your children's major life decisions. You can give them suggestions, you can help them choose by providing a second opinion or providing additional information, but you can't make them choose. They might end up hating you and blaming you because their future is forever changed by that decision. Or they might say, and I quote, "My life is ruined because of you." I have seen that happen in so many families. So another thing I did right was I volunteered. I was volunteering at 2 different places. One was a long-term care health facility for people who are seniors and for people who have a severe mental or physical disability. I went there with a group of missionaries, and basically we were just visiting and chatting with a few patients who speak Mandarin. So during my volunteering, it made me realize that I'm not the most unfortunate person in this world. Even though I'm in a wheelchair, I have a bipolar disorder, there are so many people that are far worse off than I am. There was a patient there who was deformed since birth. He was 43 years old, lying in bed all day long. He didn't even look like a human. And others have a clear mind to understand pain and suffering, yet they were trapped it in their body. They couldn't move at all. And there was a woman who uses a wheelchair, and she was blind as well. So she couldn't go anywhere without someone's help. So it really opened my eyes to see the real suffering of this world. And I concluded that I still have my loving parents, I have my dog, I have a healthy brain, and I can wheel my own wheelchair. So I'm still young and I still have chances in life. So having volunteering was tremendously helpful for my psychological and emotional recovery. The other place that I volunteer at is the same organization that I'm working for right now. I went once a week and just doing very trivial office work, like putting envelopes together or entering data on the software. So the job was very easy and low tech, but every time I went out, I was able to direct my attention away from my garbage thoughts and negative emotions. I was able to chat with people on the same disability bus, or I was able to talk to people in the office. And every time I came home, I felt like I was doing better that day compared to the days where I just stay home, regretting, hating, and having self-pity party. So the most rewarding thing about volunteering was that after graduation, I was able to learn about hiring opportunities ahead of anyone else outside of the organization. And because they knew my work ethics, they just knew me as a person more than other job candidates, they hire me. So I really encourage you that if you're taking a break from school, you don't just do nothing at home. Step out of your house and try to do something meaningful for yourself and other people. Really open your eyes to see the real suffering of this world and what you still have compared to others who have nothing. So it will give you a sense of joy and purpose, which is the key really to your psychological recovery. And also, it helps practice your skills in socializing and communicating with other people, which prepares you for your return to school or to the workplace. Okay, next, I want to talk about how to recover medically from your condition, which is the most important and probably the most challenging aspect of your recovery. So first of all, you have to be patient. Any illness with a major organ takes time to recover. It's not like a flu, you get better in weeks, and your medication is not like painkiller that works instantly. Let's say you have an illness with your kidney or your heart. How long does it take for these organs to recover if they have a chronic illness, right? Mental illness is more difficult because you are physically experiencing its troublesome symptoms every waking hour. It's hard, but set your expectation right. It could be months or even years before you see progress in your mental health. For me, it took me a total of 4 years to finally achieve a high level of recovery. But bear in mind, I had a spinal cord injury, so the physical aspect really was another story by itself. So if you have a condition like mine, it's a lifelong condition that we are born with it. It might seem like your depression came like a flood, but you probably were already mentally unhealthy for years before you start to experience clinical symptoms. So like type 1 diabetes, mental illness like bipolar disorder or schizophrenia is not curable, but it's treatable, and your quality of life can still be excellent. And secondly, like any medical condition, changes in lifestyle, having a healthy diet and regular exercise is the key to improving your overall health, including your brain health. I was really overweight after my injury because of my paralysis. I will show a picture later. And also the side effects of medication really boosted my appetite. I was hungry all the time, and I fed myself the most sugary and buttery food. Eating was the only time that I felt happy. But in 2007, I began swimming. I would swim an hour a day, and I also started to eat healthier. I realized that even though I was hungry, I could overcome it by drinking water or eating vegetables. So I lost about 40 pounds in 3 months. And that was also the turning point in my mental health recovery. And I recently learned that medication can only make us less depressed, but they can't make us happy. In order for our brain to produce dopamine, the only way is aerobic exercise, the type of exercise where your heart beats faster and your breathing becomes quicker. It doesn't require much, just 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week. So exercise and healthy eating are so important for brain health. I made this video on my channel, YouTube channel, on exactly what you should eat for mental illness, and I will share the link later. So yeah, so that's me. That's not even the worst point. That's how much weight I gained after just 1 year on medication. Which bring me to the next subject, medication. The most critical piece in mental health recovery. As I said, this is about a year after my injury. I gained so much weight that I couldn't even recognize myself in the mirror. Psychotropic medication is notorious for having a lot of side effects, especially during the initial stage of your treatment. That's because when you are in your acute stage, usually the first year, you are prescribed with more than 2 or 3 types of medication at once, and the dosages are high. Therefore, the side effects are more troublesome. I have taken so many different types of medications, and so those are the ones that I have tried and that I remembered. I'm sure there were others that I couldn't recall. The ones in bold, Seroquel and Epivel, those are the 2 that I'm still taking right now. So I experienced side effects like drowsiness, dry mouth, weight gain, severe acne, to the point where my face was disfigured. Side effects that resemble symptoms of Parkinson's disease, etc. So the side effects were terrible. But look at me today. I lost all the weight and my skin got cleared up. No more side effects of any kind. Those are all temporary and they are reversible. Because once you have found the right medication and the right dosage, you will become more mentally stable. You don't need a lot of medication to maintain your mental health. Therefore, the side effects will be very minimum after the dosage has been lowered. So the only thing is, because I'm still on meds, honestly, I'm unable to carry my own child, but I have already made peace with it. I can be a mom in other ways. My mental health comes first. I can't be a good mother if I'm insane, right? So, but if becoming a mother is a big deal for you, your doctor can perhaps stop your medication during your pregnancy by replacing it with treatment like ECT. So it's not impossible. My point is the side effects of medication should never deter you from continuing your medication treatment. No matter how big the side effects are, they still make you less crazy. If I didn't take my medication, I would not be able to sleep. I would have delusions and hallucinations and even feelings of wanting to die or wanting to kill somebody else, right? Not sure if you attended our last seminar where Caroline was sharing her story of living with bipolar disorder. She is in her 70s. She has been taking her medication religiously every day for over 50 years, and she doesn't experience any side effects now. She's healthy and perfectly functional in every area of her life, and she received 2 mental health advocacy awards in Canada. So the people that I know of, the ones that are compliant in taking medication, although they might experience challenges in the beginning, or it took them years to figure out what works for them, eventually they have all recovered or they are all stable. But the ones who refuse treatment or deny that they even have a mental illness, they are all struggling. They are all struggling, and they have become even more difficult to live with. So my psychiatrist once told me that many people don't realize that they have a treatable condition until they are in their 50s or 60s. By that time, they have achieved nothing in their life, no education, no career, no family, all because they were not cooperative with their treatment plan when they were younger, when they had the chance to make a difference for their life. So if you have diabetes, wouldn't you seek treatment right away? Why is it that when you have a mental illness, when you have an illness with your brain, you think that you can overcome it by willpower? It's almost impossible to conquer some of those physiological symptoms like anxiety, phobia, mania, and depression by willpower. Only medication treatment can help. So lastly, I just want to say being a Christian is so important for my mental health recovery because many things like forgiveness, regret, and resentment are so damaging to our mental health. Even when our brain is medically healthy, living with those negative feelings can still make you live in darkness. So having a faith life really helps me deal with my past and present challenges. We are not made with just flesh, but spirit and mind. Therefore, being healthy spiritually is also critical to our overall well-being. And I have 2 videos on spiritual health, which you can check them out later. So to conclude, I want to say that I used to think that I missed 4 years of my life being miserable and extremely suicidal. I thought that I missed out by never being able to party or enjoy the wildlife as a young person. But now I'm so thankful that my illness actually prevented me from doing things that I would definitely regret later on in my life. And none of those years spent in hardships were wasted because they made me into a better and stronger person. I'm more mature than people my age. I don't take anything or anyone for granted. For offenses that didn't cross the line, I can forgive people easily or say sorry, even if it's not really my fault. I guess everyone, regardless, if they have a disability or a mental illness, everyone would experience hardship at some point in their life. It could be divorce or injury or illness or the death of a loved one. It's just part of life. No one can prevent bad things from happening to them. But if we experience hardship at a very young age, it actually helps us face or avoid some of the challenges that other people face. For example, if I value people more than matters, if I value kindness over right or wrong, I will have a better quality marriage that won't end in divorce, right? If I know the importance of keeping up with my healthy lifestyle, the chance of me having heart disease or stroke later on in life is lower. Therefore, don't think of yourself as less fortunate than your peers because you have a condition. Think of it as you are experiencing life's inevitable challenges at an earlier age. It's actually better because after our ordeal is over, we are still young. We can still catch up easily. By the time I fully recovered, I was still 22. I missed out on nothing. My life now is beautiful and full of potential, and nothing really bothers me anymore because nothing can be worse than what I have already gone through. So I'm really thankful for my hardships. I'm the person I am right now because of my hardships, and it's a blessing in disguise. So if I can recover from my double trouble and look at it as a blessing, you can definitely recover from yours. And you don't have to do it alone. We welcome you to join our support group where we will learn and we will grow together, because this doesn't require the effort. Just one person. Medication alone is not enough, but you also need social support. You also need education, awareness. So it's a whole package. but our support group will really offer you and make it easier for you. So if you don't already have WeChat, you can download that in any app stores. And then you can add this contact ID. This is a volunteer's ID, Love Heals 2022. So indicate that you want to join the English support group. So this will be an ID for you to join our support group. And lastly, I just want to share some final resources. You can see all of my previous videos from my channel, Nancy Sha 988. And also, I also publish a book on my journey, and you can download a free PDF from my website, nancysha.com.